"You don't belong here anymore, Grace. You should pack your things and leave." Those were her first words, spoken in my kitchen, with my apron on, standing where I stood every morning, making coffee for my husband. Her name was Clara, Ethan's second wife. For a second, I didn't even register it. My brain went blank like it couldn't accept what my ears had just heard. The smell of coffee was the same blend I'd been making for him for years, and there she was, stirring it while smiling like she'd earned the spot next to him. Ethan didn't say a thing. He just stood there, rubbing the back of his neck, eyes glued to the floor like he was too embarrassed to look at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that mug across the room and demand an answer. Instead, I just stood there and watched her hand brush his arm as she told me, "We'll handle the bills now, Grace. Don't worry about anything. Just move on. Move on. From a 10-year marriage. From the house we bought together. From the life I built with him. No way. Not yet." Flashback, 5 years earlier. Back then I was the steady one. Ethan and I were college sweethearts. He was funny, ambitious, the kind of person who made you laugh even when things were tight. I backed him through everything. Student loans, bad business choices, the nights he wanted to quit. I'd say, "We'll get through this. I believe in you." And we did. When his construction company finally took off, it felt like we'd made it. I helped with the books, even though numbers weren't my thing. I learned QuickBooks on the fly, stayed up late filing reports, clipped coupons to stretch our paycheck. We bought this house, picked the paint colors, the curtains, the tiles. Every corner had a piece of me. Then, about 2 years ago, things started to shift. Ethan came home late more often. Client dinners became a regular excuse. I trusted him, so I let it slide. Then the perfume on his shirts, the secretive texts, the way he became distant. I confronted him once. He said I was stressed, told me to relax. Like an idiot, I believed him. The day everything fell apart. It was a Sunday when Linda called. Her voice sounded off. "Grace, check Ethan's Facebook. He's tagged in something." My heart started pounding. I opened the app and there he was, Ethan at some resort, holding another woman's hand. She was leaning into him like they'd been together forever. The caption read, "Weekend getaway with my love." My love. I dropped my phone. I drove to his office, thinking maybe it was a mistake, a staged photo, something. But when I walked in, she was sitting in his chair. Clara. Calm, confident, like she owned the place. "Who is she?" I asked. He paused and said it like it was no big deal. "She's my wife." My knees went weak. "You're what?" He told me they'd married abroad 6 months earlier. He called it complicated. He said we'd drifted apart. He said he didn't tell me because he didn't want to hurt me, and he promised I'd be taken care of. Taken care of. Like I was an employee getting severance. I left his office shaking and drove home through the blur. The betrayal at home. A week later he brought her to our house. My house. He said it was temporary. She walked in like she was judging a hotel room, touching furniture, critiquing the decor. "It's nice," she said, "but I'll probably redecorate." Photos of Ethan and me disappeared from the walls. My clothes were shoved into the guest room. She sat in my spot at the table. Even the dogs started following her because Ethan told me to be nice and keep the peace. Keep the peace. While they slowly stole everything that made this place ours. I didn't explode. I kept quiet. Let her think she'd won. She mocked my cooking in front of me, leaned into him, whispered when she thought I couldn't hear. I let it slide because I needed time. I was planning. The turning point. One night, while she was hosting a new beginnings party for Ethan, I wasn't invited, of course. I pretended to sleep in the guest room so I could listen. Laughter, clinking glasses, her fake little giggle echoed through the walls. Then Tom, Ethan's business partner, knocked. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. "You deserve to know," he said quietly. "Clara's been pushing to sell the company. She's trying to get Ethan to sign everything over to her." That hit me like a punch. She wasn't just after my marriage. She was after the business I helped keep alive. That night I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the old wedding photo I tucked in a drawer. I replayed every late night, every paycheck sacrifice, every time I picked up the slack so Ethan could chase his dream. No, not this. Not everything I built. The plan. I started keeping records. Every odd conversation, every expense, every transfer. I played the part she wanted me to play. Broken, submissive, harmless. She didn't see that I was watching. She didn't know I was collecting proof. When I found out she'd funneled company money into her accounts, I saved the statements, screenshots, everything. She was clever, but she underestimated me. When the right moment came, I made my move. The morning after I decided I wasn't going down quietly, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were puffy, my hair was a mess, and I looked like someone who just crawled out of a storm. But underneath all that, there it was. A spark. Determination. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to make them both wish they'd never underestimated me. So I started playing the part. I smiled at Clara in the mornings, asked her how she was settling in, even complimented her honeymoon glow. She looked thrown off, like she couldn't decide whether I'd finally snapped or was plotting something. Probably both. One morning she was sipping coffee out of my favorite mug and said, "Ethan says you're still sorting out some documents." I smiled. Yeah, just tying up a few loose ends. She had no idea those loose ends were the threads that were about to unravel her perfect little world. First thing I did was call Tom, Ethan's business partner. Told him I wanted to help with the accounting again, just like old times. He hesitated, but I reminded him how smoothly I used to run the numbers. Within a week, I was back in the system. That's when I started noticing things. Every time Clara logged in, I noted the exact date and time. I watched her move small amounts of money into a new company, an LLC under her maiden name. Little sums that didn't raise flags on their own, but together? Almost 200 grand. I showed the records to Tom. He was furious. "She's bleeding the company dry," he said. "Ethan doesn't know," I told him. He shook his head. "Not yet." We agreed to keep it quiet. I needed more evidence. I tore through the house, checked drawers, files, even the trash. She was careless. Left behind receipts, credit card slips, printed statements. I photographed everything, cataloged it like I was building a court case. And then, I found something I didn't expect, a marriage certificate. Mexico, dated months before Ethan ever filed for divorce. My hands were shaking. He hadn't just cheated. He'd committed bigamy. The perfect opportunity. About a month later, Clara decided to throw a client appreciation dinner at my house. Her chance to show off as the charming new Mrs. Whitman. She said to me, "Maybe you can help with the dishes." I smiled. Of course. I spent 3 days preparing, not for the party, but for her downfall. I sent an anonymous email to one of Ethan's biggest clients, Mr. Jacobs. Attached were documents showing Clara's secret transfers. Jacobs hated dishonesty more than anything. The night of the dinner, the house buzzed with music and chatter. Clara floated around in a red dress, dripping in jewelry Ethan probably bought with stolen money. I kept my distance waiting. Then Mr. Jacobs walked in, holding a folder. His face was tight. "We need to talk," he said to Ethan. "What's this about?" Ethan asked. Jacobs dropped the folder on the table. "You tell me. Were these transactions authorized by you?" Clara froze. Ethan flipped through the pages, his face draining of color. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. I don't know," she stuttered. "It's just business expenses." "Business expenses?" he exploded. $200,000 to your personal account? The room went silent. The guests looked at each other. Clara's mask cracked. That's when I stepped forward. "She's been transferring money for months," I said. "I warned you, Ethan. You just didn't want to believe me." He turned, eyes wide. "Grace, don't," I said. "You let her destroy everything we built." The fallout. By midnight, the party was done. Investors were gone. Clara was sobbing, blaming everyone. Ethan sat with his head in his hands. When the last guest left, she turned on me. "You did this," she screamed. I smiled. "No, Clara. You did this to yourself." She lunged at me, but Ethan grabbed her arm. "Stop it," he said. She glared at him. "I never loved you, Ethan. I just wanted the company." The room went dead quiet. He stared at her, finally seeing her for what she was. Then he said it broken. "Get out." The final confrontation. I thought that was the end of it. But the next day she came back. It was raining hard. I heard her car before I saw her, then the door slammed open. She was soaked, mascara running, eyes blazing. "You ruined my life," she screamed. "No, Clara," I said, standing my ground. "You ruined mine first." She took a step forward. "You think you won? He'll never love you again. You're pathetic." Something inside me shifted. I realized she wasn't dangerous anymore. She was desperate. I opened the door wider. "Get out before I call the police." She hesitated, then spat. "You'll regret this." I didn't even flinch. I shut the door in her face. The aftermath. A few weeks later, Ethan came by. He looked older, tired. The kind of tired you can't sleep off. "I filed for divorce," he said quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness." "You're right," I said. "You don't deserve it." He nodded. "I lost everything, Grace." "No," I told him softly. "You threw it away." He left, and I never saw him again. I sold the house, moved to another state, and started my own accounting firm. And that's when it hit me. Revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about getting myself back. For months, everything finally went quiet. I rented this tiny apartment on the edge of town, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, just enough space for me and a beat-up desk I bought off Facebook Marketplace. I started freelancing again, managing books for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. It was mine. For the first time in forever, I could breathe. No fake smiles. No pretending. No walking on eggshells around a man who made me feel invisible. Still, sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. You can get revenge, you can win, but when the dust settles, you're left alone with the quiet, and the quiet is brutal. But just when I thought the past was finally behind me, it showed up at my door. The knock at the door. It was a Saturday morning. I was halfway through a cup of coffee when someone knocked. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. When I opened the door, my breath caught. Tom. He looked older, worn out, like he hadn't slept properly in months. "Grace," he said softly, "we need to talk." I hadn't seen him since that night, the one where everything came crashing down. "What's going on?" I asked, cautious. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's about Ethan. Things got bad." My stomach dropped. He told me the business was gone. Investors bailed after the scandal. Debts piled up, and Clara, of course, had vanished after emptying their joint accounts. Ethan was apparently spiraling. Not eating, not sleeping. I crossed my arms. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said, "he asked about you. Said he wanted to apologize. For real this time." I didn't respond. My heart wasn't racing because I cared. It was because I didn't understand why now. After everything he did, what could he possibly say that would matter? Tom handed me a folded piece of paper. "Here's his address. Do whatever you want with it." When he left, I stared at it for a long time. I should have thrown it away, but I didn't. The visit. It took me 3 days to finally drive there. The house looked like a bad memory. Chipped paint, overgrown weeds, a broken porch light flickering. For a second, I thought about turning back. But curiosity has a funny way of overriding logic. When he opened the door, I barely recognized him. His once sharp suit guy look was gone. He was in sweats, unshaven, eyes hollow. "Grace," he said quietly, like my name physically hurt to say. "You wanted to talk," I said. He stepped aside, and I walked into chaos. Bills everywhere, takeout boxes, a bottle of whiskey half finished on the counter. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice breaking. I regret everything. Clara wasn't who I thought she was." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "You think?" He ran a hand through his hair. "She took it all, the money, the clients, even the company name. I let her in because I thought I deserved more, and I ended up losing you." I looked at him, this hollow version of the man I once loved, and said, "You didn't lose me, Ethan. You threw me away." He nodded, eyes glassy. "You were always stronger than me." I turned toward the door. No, I just didn't have the luxury of being weak. And I left. The unexpected call. A few weeks later, I was working on my firm's new website when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Grace Miller? A woman asked. Detective Rhodes, County Sheriff's Office. We're investigating a fraud case involving a Clara Hudson. You may have information about her. My stomach tightened. I used to. What happened? She's resurfaced, the detective said. Using fake identities, scamming small business owners. Your name came up in her old financial records. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Clara. I thought I'd buried that nightmare. Apparently, she wasn't done. At the station, Detective Rhodes was sharp, all business. She spread photos across the desk. She's been going by several names: Clara Brooks, Clara Vance, and this last one. My eyes locked on the final picture. Blonde hair. New face. But it was her. Clara. Standing beside a man at a charity gala. That man was Ethan. I blinked. That can't be recent. 3 weeks ago, the detective said. My throat went dry. That's impossible. He told me. Looks like she found him again, the detective interrupted. We think she's setting up another shell company under his name. He may not realize it yet. I sat there in silence. After everything, he let her back in. The realization. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My brain wouldn't shut up. Was he that blind? Or just that desperate? I wanted to ignore it. Truly. He made his choices. But part of me, the part that still remembered who he used to be, couldn't shake it. I didn't love him anymore. Not even close. But I also didn't want to see him destroyed again. Not by her. So I made a choice. For one last time, I was going to face my past. Not for revenge this time, but for closure. I reached out to one of my business contacts who handled PR for charity events. Pretended to be a reporter and asked about the gala from that photo. She sent me the guest list. There it was. Ethan Miller and Clara Vance. The next gala was in 2 days. I borrowed a black dress from my friend Linda, pinned my hair up, and looked in the mirror. No fear. No sadness. Just calm resolve. If I was going to face them, I'd do it as the woman they thought they broke, but didn't. When I walked into that ballroom, the place sparkled with chandeliers and laughter, and there they were. Clara, laughing too loud, pretending she belonged. Ethan beside her, uncomfortable but not saying a word. I waited until they turned toward the bar. Then I walked up, slow, steady, unapologetic. Evening, I said, like I'd just run into them at the grocery store. Clara froze. The color drained from her face. Grace, Ethan said, voice low, shocked. I smiled. Tilted my head just slightly. Miss me. The music was classy, soft, violins humming, champagne glasses clinking, but beneath all that polished glamour, the air was heavy. Everyone was smiling, laughing, networking, and yet the second I walked in, the whole energy shifted. Clara's smile froze mid-laugh. Her fingers slipped off Ethan's arm like she'd touched fire. Ethan looked straight at me, and I swear, for a second, he forgot how to breathe. Grace, he said, almost whispering it. I smirked. You look surprised. You shouldn't be. Public event. Anyone could walk in. Clara recovered quick, or at least tried to. Her lips curved into that fake society smile. Grace, darling. How unexpected. You look well. I tilted my head. Do I? You, on the other hand, seem to have reinvented yourself again. New name, new hair, same lies. Her eyes sharpened. Excuse me. Oh, come on, Clara. Don't make me spell it out. Or should I say Clara Vance this week? Ethan frowned. Grace, what are you talking about? I looked him dead in the eye. She's been running scams again, Ethan. The detectives are already on it. And this time they've got proof. Clara's voice dropped low, sharp. You don't know what you're saying. Oh, I do, I said, stepping closer. You used him before, and now you're doing it again. But not this time. The scene unfolds. People were starting to notice. The music kept going, but the chatter dulled. All eyes on us. Clara tugged at Ethan's arm. Come on, honey. Let's not do this here. Sit down, I said, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. It froze her mid-step. I reached into my purse, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table toward Ethan. Bank statements. Shell accounts. Transfers in your name. Recognize any of them. He opened the papers, flipping through them, his face twisting from confusion to panic. What the hell is this? Clara's voice cracked as she shouted. She's lying. You know how bitter she is, Ethan. She'll say anything to ruin me. I smiled small and calm. Oh, Clara. You still think I'm that woman who just cries in the corner? No. Not anymore. I nodded toward the back of the room. Detective Rhodes stepped out of the crowd, flashing her badge. Clara's face went ghost white. You've got to be kidding me. Ms. Hudson, Rhodes said evenly, you're under investigation for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. You can come quietly, or we can do this the hard way. The entire room exploded in whispers. Cameras turned. Phones came out. Clara tried to backpedal, but the officers were already there, cuffing her wrists. You'll regret this, Grace, she screamed. You always have to be the victim. I stepped closer, my voice calm and clear. I'm not the victim. I'm the warning. And then she was gone, dragged out through a side exit as the crowd parted, silent and stunned. After the storm, when it was over, Ethan just stood there, clutching the papers, staring down at them like he could rewrite the story by reading harder. Finally, he said, Grace, why did you do this? I looked at him. Because I couldn't watch her destroy someone else's life. Even yours. He swallowed hard. I don't deserve that. It's not about what you deserve, I said. It's about ending what she started. He nodded, eyes glassy. Do you think we could ever? No, I said gently. We can't go back. That version of us doesn't exist anymore. He closed his eyes, nodded once, and whispered, I understand. I hope so, I said. Because the worst thing you ever did wasn't leaving me. It was forcing me to find out how strong I actually was. Then I turned and walked away. Rebuilding. That night, I sat by my window, the city lights flickering like static across the skyline. My phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, gossip sites, news outlets. Businesswoman arrested for fraud at charity gala. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. Relief, not joy, washed over me. Weeks went by. I gave my statement, answered every question, and watched justice roll out quietly but completely. Clara pled guilty. Ethan avoided prison by cooperating, though from what I heard, his name was ruined. I poured everything into my firm. Clients trusted me, maybe because I'd already lived through every kind of betrayal possible. Then, one morning an email popped up. From Ethan. Just one line. Thank you for saving me, even when I didn't deserve it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A new chapter. A year later, I stood outside a sleek glass building in downtown Seattle. My name, Miller and Grace Accounting Group, gleamed on the sign. Linda walked up beside me, coffee in hand. You really did it. I smiled. Yeah, guess I did. You ever think about him? She asked softly. Sometimes, I said, but not with anger. Just perspective. She nodded, linking her arm through mine. So what now? I looked at the building, the skyline, the new life I'd carved out of all that wreckage. Whatever I want. For the first time, my story wasn't about Ethan or Clara. It was about me. But peace never lasts. Late one evening, my phone rang again. Detective Rhodes. Her tone was off, careful. Grace, she said, I wanted to give you a heads up. Clara's case isn't as closed as we thought. My chest tightened. What do you mean? There's new evidence. Looks like she had an accomplice, someone who helped move money through offshore accounts. Someone with inside knowledge of Ethan's company. I froze. You're not saying? We're not certain yet, she said. But Ethan's signature shows up on one of the newer documents. Could be forged or not. Just stay alert, okay? When I hung up, I just sat there, staring into the dark. After everything, the lies, the justice, the freedom, I realized something chilling. Some stories don't end clean. And some ghosts don't stay buried. For days after Detective Rhodes' call, I couldn't shake that heavy feeling in my gut. I'd sit in my office, pretending to focus on client files or payroll sheets, but my mind kept wandering back to Ethan. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be news, an arrest, a confession, something. I didn't want to believe he could be involved again. I wanted to think maybe he'd learned. But the little voice in my head, the one that had been right before, kept whispering, "You thought that once already." So I stopped waiting for updates. I decided to find the truth myself. Digging again. I went through my old records, copies of Ethan's company files I'd saved from the first investigation. I hadn't opened them in months. But when I pulled up the digital folder, one caught my eye. Q4 transfers. It had a recent edit date. I hadn't touched it. I opened it. Inside was a scanned authorization form. Signature, Ethan Miller. Date, 3 months ago. Transfer, a payment to a Cayman Islands account, under Clara Vance. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't old data. It was new, meaning someone was still moving money for her, or she was pulling strings from behind bars. Either way, Ethan's name was all over it. The visit to Rhodes. I drove to Detective Rhodes' office the next morning. She read the document, her face tight. "You did the right thing bringing this in," she said. "But this complicates things. If Ethan's still involved, he's either scared, guilty, or both. Or maybe," I said quietly, "he never stopped loving her." She looked up. "That's possible. But it gets worse. Clara was transferred last week, lower security facility. Someone filed the appeal that got her moved." I frowned. "Who?" She slid a paper across the desk. "Ethan Miller. He's been visiting her too." The confrontation. That night I drove to the same beat-up house where I'd last seen him. Only this time, there was a sleek black sedan parked outside. New money, old mistakes. I didn't knock. I just walked in. He was at the kitchen table, laptop open, papers everywhere. When he looked up and saw me, he went pale. "Grace," he stammered. "This isn't what it looks like." "Then explain it," I snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're wiring money offshore under Clara's fake name, visiting her in prison, and filing appeals to get her out. So tell me, Ethan, what the hell are you doing?" He exhaled, hands shaking. "I'm trying to fix what I broke." I laughed bitterly. "By helping the woman who destroyed you?" "She's pregnant," he said suddenly. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at him. "What?" He swallowed. "She wrote to me. She said she's pregnant, and it's mine." For a second, everything blurred. My ears rang. Of course. Clara always had one more move. "And you believe her?" I asked, voice steady but low. He hesitated. I had to be sure. I took a step forward. "What did she promise you this time, Ethan? Redemption? A family?" "She's using you. Again." He looked broken. "Grace, I just can't live with the guilt anymore." "You're not guilty," I said quietly. "You're addicted. To her chaos, to your own self-pity. I can't save you this time." He looked down. "Then who will?" A dangerous discovery. I left furious, exhausted, telling myself I was done. But the next morning an email landed in my inbox. No sender. No subject. Just, "You don't know the full story." Attached was a video file. I hesitated, then clicked. Grainy security footage filled the screen. A warehouse, dimly lit. Ethan stood in frame, talking to someone just out of view. Then a woman stepped forward. "Clara. Free." The timestamp was 2 days ago. My blood ran cold. She wasn't behind bars. She'd escaped. And Ethan was right there with her. The decision. I called Rhodes immediately. Her voice was tense. "Clara's transfer van was hit 2 nights ago," she said. "Driver knocked unconscious. She's gone. And yes, Ethan's car was seen near the scene." "Tell me she's not coming here," I said. Rhodes paused. "We think you might be a target. You exposed her last time." I hung up and looked out the window. Normal street. Normal life. Joggers, cars, kids on bikes. And yet, my pulse wouldn't slow down. I knew Clara. If she'd come for me once, she'd do it again. The waiting. That night, I double-locked every door, checked every window twice. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the walls sounded like footsteps. Then, sometime after midnight, a soft click. The front latch. My heart jumped to my throat. I grabbed my phone. The motion light outside flicked on. A shadow crossed the porch. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher said as I whispered, someone's outside my house. Before I could say more, a voice, low, calm, and unmistakable, slipped through the cracked window. Grace. Clara. She stepped out of the darkness, hair cropped short, eyes cold. You just don't stop, do you? She said. You should be in prison, I hissed. Oh, I was, she said, smiling. Until your ex-husband helped me out. He still thinks I love him. Men are so easy. My hand tightened around the kitchen knife beside me. What do you want, Clara? She took one step closer to the glass. Closure. You ruined my life, Grace. So I'm going to ruin yours. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Clara's expression twitched from smug to panicked. You're brave, she said softly. But bravery won't save you. Then she turned and disappeared into the night. By the time the cops arrived, she was gone. Aftermath. They combed the neighborhood. Found her car abandoned 2 blocks over, engine still warm. No sign of her. Ethan was arrested that same night for helping her escape. When Rhodes called to confirm, I didn't know whether to cry or exhale. It was over again. But I knew better now. Because people like Clara don't just disappear. They wait. And someday when you least expect it, they knock again. After that night, everything in me rewired. The cops left, the sirens faded. But my body didn't get the memo. I jumped at every sound. The fridge hum, the pipes creaking, the wind scraping the windows. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was wired, hyper-alert, like prey that's learned to survive by never blinking. Detective Rhodes put patrol cars on my street. She even offered me police protection. I laughed it off at first, told her I didn't need it. I'd been through worse. That confidence lasted exactly until the next morning, when I opened my door and saw the note taped to it. Round 2. See. I called Rhodes immediately. She sent a team, dusted for prints. Nothing, of course. Clara wasn't sloppy. She was deliberate. Rhodes looked at me hard. She's toying with you, Grace. Don't give her what she wants. Yeah. Easy to say when you're not the one being hunted. The move. 2 days later, I packed a single suitcase and left. I told my clients I needed a sabbatical, locked up the office, and vanished. I rented a cabin outside Spokane under a fake name, cash deposit, no paper trail. The first night there felt almost peaceful. No cars, no traffic, just the sound of crickets and the crackle of the fireplace. I thought maybe I could finally breathe again. But peace doesn't last when you know someone like Clara exists. I built a routine. Check every lock 3 times, phone always within reach, flashlight by the bed. It was lonely, but at least it was quiet. Until it wasn't. The visit. A week later, I came back from a grocery run and stopped cold on the porch. The curtains. I always kept them closed. They were open. I pushed the door slowly. Everything looked fine. Couch untouched, laptop closed, windows locked. But in the kitchen on the counter sat my coffee mug. A single lipstick print. Deep red. My mug. The bag slipped out of my hands. I ran outside, shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. She's been here, I told Rhodes. Within an hour, officers swept the place. No forced entry. No prints. Nothing. Rhodes stared at the mug. She wants you to know she can get close. That's the point. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window with the flashlight in my lap, staring at the dark tree line until dawn. The trap. A few days later, Rhodes called. We picked up a cell ping near your area. We think it's her. My throat went dry. What do we do? We set a trap. We staged it like I was leaving town. Car packed, goodbye calls made. Local cops hid nearby, waiting to see if she'd bite. At sunset, I drove a few miles down the road to a concealed turnout where the officers waited. We watched the cabin through binoculars. Hours crawled by. Then, just before 9, headlights. A dark sedan rolled up my drive. She stepped out. Clara. Same confident walk, like she owned the ground she stood on. Rhodes gave the signal. Flashing lights, engines roaring. Officers swarmed the cabin. Clara didn't run. She just smiled. The confrontation. They brought her in calm, almost elegant, hair tidy, clean clothes. Like she'd just come from brunch, not a manhunt. I sat behind the one-way mirror as Rhodes started the interrogation. "Why come back, Clara?" Rhodes asked. "You could have vanished." Clara leaned back, crossing her legs. "Because it's not over. Grace needs to feel what I felt, losing everything." Rhodes pressed on. "You broke into her cabin." Clara smirked. "Did I?" "She still hides the spare key under the flower pot." "Some habits die hard." My stomach twisted. She'd been watching me the whole time. Rhodes frowned. "Why leave the lipstick mark?" Clara's smile deepened. "Fear lasts longer than pain." Then her gaze lifted straight toward the mirror, right where I was sitting, and she whispered, "I told you, Grace. You'll regret this." She couldn't see me, but she knew. Somehow she knew. The collapse. They transferred her back that night, maximum security this time, but something in me flipped. The fear was gone, replaced by something hotter, heavier, fury. For years I'd let her dictate the game. Not anymore. The next morning I told Rhodes, "Let me help you finish this." She hesitated. "You've been through hell already." "I'm an accountant," I said. "You're chasing criminals who live in numbers. Let me trace her money." Finally she nodded. "All right. But you follow my lead." Following the money. For weeks I pored over digital ledgers, routing trails, ghost accounts. Eventually a pattern surfaced. Transfers cycling through old shell companies, all leading to one name. Aegis Consulting. The registered agent? Ethan Miller. Rhodes stared at the screen. "He's still helping her." I nodded. "Not helping. Funding. He's her bankroll." The call. A week later, just as the arrest papers were ready, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Grace." His voice was low, shaky. "Ethan." I went cold. "What do you want?" "Don't trust them," he said quickly. "She's not running. She's working for someone. Dig. Dangerous. If you keep digging, they'll come for you too." "Who's they?" I demanded. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, pulse pounding. For years I thought I'd been fighting Clara. But maybe she wasn't the one pulling the strings. And if Ethan was right, if someone else was behind all of this, then I wasn't just being hunted by her anymore. I was in the middle of something much bigger. I didn't sleep that night. Ethan's voice kept replaying in my head. "Don't trust them. Clara isn't running. She's working for someone." I'd spent so long believing Clara was the villain of my story. But what if she wasn't the one pulling the strings? What if she was just another piece on someone else's board? By sunrise, I was back at my laptop, staring at the Aegis Consulting file. My coffee had gone cold. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. If Clara wasn't acting alone, there had to be a money trail. And money always leaves footprints, no matter how deep someone tries to bury them. The discovery. I followed the transactions. Ethan's name linked to Aegis. Aegis linked to a firm in Chicago. That firm connected to an offshore holding company in the British Virgin Islands. And that's where I saw it. Tom Keenan, Ethan's old business partner. The man who once told me to be careful about Clara. The man who had warned me. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be a coincidence. I called Rhodes immediately. "Check Tom Keenan. He's involved. He's the one behind the offshore transfers." There was a long pause before she said quietly, "Grace, I'm staring at his name right now." My chest tightened. "So it's true?" "Yes. And more than that, we think he helped Clara escape." The revelation. That afternoon, Rhodes spread out the evidence in front of me. Bank statements, travel logs, surveillance stills. "Tom's been moving money for years," she said. "He built Aegis Consulting as a front. When Clara got close to Ethan, she discovered what he was doing. Instead of turning him in, they struck a deal. She kept quiet and he kept her paid." I stared at the documents, numb. "And Ethan? He was their shield," Rhodes said. "Tom used Ethan's company to launder money. Clara used Ethan to stay close to it. When you exposed her, you didn't just take her down. You disrupted an entire network." I felt sick. So Ethan never betrayed me to protect her. He was being used too. Rhodes nodded. Exactly. But now that Clara's gone rogue, Tom's cleaning house. I whispered, and I'm next on his list. The meeting. I couldn't let it rest. I needed to hear it from him. Tom still ran his company downtown, the same office, just flashier. I walked in under a fake name, Rachel Hill. When he saw me, his easy charm vanished. Grace. I smiled thinly. Rachel, actually. But you always did love pretending. He sighed, gesturing toward his office. You shouldn't have come. Oh, I think I should. I closed the door behind me. You've been busy, offshore accounts, shell firms, helping fugitives. You must be proud. He leaned against his desk, face hard. You don't know what you're talking about. I pulled a flash drive from my purse. Oh, I do. And so does Rhodes. You used Clara to distract everyone while you laundered millions through Ethan's business. Now you're out of shadows, Tom. He laughed softly. You think this is just about me? His eyes sharpened. You're in way over your head. Clara wasn't running from me. She was running from them. Who's them? I demanded. He shook his head slowly. People who don't like attention. You should have stayed quiet, Grace. You poked at something that doesn't forgive curiosity. Then he smiled, cold, deliberate. Let's see if you make it out twice. The SUV. I left shaking. I called Rhodes, but before I could even start, I caught it in my rearview mirror. A black SUV, tinted windows, keeping pace. I turned right. It turned right. Left. It followed. My pulse was hammering. I pulled into a crowded parking garage, weaving through levels until I found a spot wedged between two trucks. I killed the engine and waited. The SUV rolled slowly past, paused near the ramp, then drove off. Only then did I let myself breathe. But I knew the truth now. Tom hadn't been bluffing. There were others. The warning. That night, I packed what I could, laptop, documents, the flash drive. I was ready to vanish again. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Grace, Ethan's voice said, rushed, desperate. You have to leave. No. Tom knows you want to see him. He won't let you walk away. I gripped the phone. Ethan, what is this? Who are these people? His voice dropped. They're powerful. Tom's been laundering money for them for years. Politicians, investors, foreign accounts. Clara found out, so he kept her close. She was leverage. And now that she's gone, you're the last loose end. My stomach twisted. And you? Are you one of them? Silence. Then, barely audible, not by choice. The call disconnected. The break-in. I didn't even have time to think before I heard tires outside. Headlights swept across my walls. I ran to the back door, but it flew open before I reached it. Two men in black stepped inside, guns drawn. Where are the files, Ms. Miller? One barked. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then instinct kicked in. I grabbed the flash drive from my bag, shoved it in my pocket, and bolted. Glass shattered as I crashed through the window. Pain shot up my arm, but I didn't stop. I ran into the woods, branches cutting at my face, lungs burning. Behind me, one of them shouted, "She's got it. Don't let her reach the cops." I kept running until I saw flashing lights ahead, red and blue piercing through the trees. I stumbled into the road, waving frantically. Help! Please! The aftermath. The officers found me covered in blood and dirt, clutching the flash drive like it was life itself. Back at the station, Rhodes met me at the door. Jesus, Grace. I handed her the drive with shaking fingers. Everything's on here. The accounts. The names. The proof. She nodded, eyes sharp and determined. Then we end it. Tonight. For the first time, I believed her. But as I sat there, bandaged and exhausted, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If Tom was just one piece of the web, who else was still out there, pulling the strings? When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. White lights. Foreline. The sharp sting of antiseptic in the air. My arm was wrapped tight in gauze. A uniformed officer stood at the door. And Rhodes was sitting beside me, hair tied back, eyes hollow from no sleep, a folder balanced on her knee. "You're lucky to be alive," she said quietly. "Those men weren't hired to scare you. They were ordered to erase you." My throat felt raw. "Did you get them?" "One got away," she said. "The other's in custody. And we found this in their car." She opened the folder. Photographs spilled out. Shots of me outside my office, my car at the grocery store, my cabin window lit at night. They'd been watching me for weeks. A chill ran down my spine. "Tom," I whispered. Rhodes nodded grimly. "We've got enough to take him down now. The flash drive you brought, it's a gold mine. Offshore ledgers, email chains, client payments, 7 years of laundering." I swallowed hard. "And Clara?" "She's still missing," Rhodes said. "But the transfers show she's been working as Tom's financial mule. Ethan might have helped her without realizing who he was really protecting." "No," I said. "He knew. He just didn't think it would go this far." Rhodes straightened, voice steady. "We're hitting Tom's office tonight. Midnight. He's meeting one of his offshore contacts. We'll have everything in one place. But Grace, you've done enough. Let us handle this." I shook my head. "No. I started this. I'm ending it." The setup. By 11:30 p.m., the city was quiet. That kind of heavy electric stillness that comes before something breaks. I sat in an unmarked car with Rhodes and 2 officers, parked across from Tom's downtown building. The high-rise windows gleamed against the dark sky, sterile and cold. Through the glass walls, I could see him, calm polished, flipping through documents like the world still belonged to him. Rhodes murmured into her radio, "All units, hold for my signal." Then the elevator doors opened inside the building. 2 silhouettes stepped out. Ethan and Clara. Alive. My heart jumped. "Rhodes." "I see them," she said tightly. "Stay put." The meeting. Inside the office, Tom's grin spread the second they entered. "Well, if it isn't my favorite duo," he said smoothly. Clara crossed her arms. "Save it, Tom. We're not here to play games." Ethan looked uneasy. "You said this was just a quick exchange." Tom chuckled. "Relax, Ethan. You're almost done being useful." I could hear everything through the mic Rhodes had hidden in the vent earlier. Clara's voice was sharp. "You promised protection. I've done my part. If I go down, you go down." Tom stood, circling her like a predator. "Oh, Clara, you still think you're an equal. You were a distraction. If anything goes wrong, I'll make sure everyone believes it was you." Her confidence cracked. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," he said, grinning. Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough. I lost everything for you both." Tom turned cold eyes on him. "You were convenient, Ethan. That's all." Rhodes whispered, "Now." The raid. The doors exploded open. "Police. Hands where we can see them." Tom froze. Clara screamed. Ethan stumbled back, eyes wide. In seconds, the room filled with officers, radios, shouting, chaos. Tom hit the floor cuffed. Clara bolted, but Rhodes caught her herself. "It's over," Rhodes said flatly. Clara struggled, fury in her voice. "You think this ends with him? He's not the top." "Then we'll find the rest," Rhodes said, shoving her toward the exit. I stepped out of the car despite the warning and walked into the building. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Tom looked up from the floor, wrists bound, and smiled. "You think you won, Grace? You're still part of it. You just don't see the board." I stared down at him. "No, Tom. The game's over." He smirked faintly. "That's what Ethan said too. The truth unravels." At the station hours later, Ethan sat across from me, hands trembling, eyes red. "Why?" I asked. "Why not tell me the truth?" He sighed. "I thought I could fix it." Tom had people everywhere. He said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill me. When Clara ran, I thought maybe helping her could make it right somehow. "Make it right?" My voice cracked. "You almost got me killed." "I know," he whispered. "I was trying to protect you." I stood up. "You keep saying that, Ethan. And somehow, I'm always the one left bleeding." I walked out before he could answer. Clara's last card. The next morning, Rhodes called me into her office. "She's talking," she said. "Clara." She's offering a full confession, every name, every offshore account, in exchange for witness protection. I blinked. You're actually considering it? Roadside. If it brings down the rest of the network, we might have to. I sat in silence. So she gets a new name, a new life, while everyone else buries the damage she caused? Rhodes looked at me, voice low. You wanted justice, Grace. This is justice. It didn't feel like it. The farewell. A week later, Ethan took a plea deal for cooperation. Tom was denied bail. Clara was transferred under guard to a federal facility. I went home for the first time in weeks. My mailbox was stuffed with junk, and one plain white envelope. No return address. My name written in perfect cursive. Inside was a single line, scrawled in red ink. It's not over until I say it's over. No signature. But I didn't need one. I stood on my porch, wind tugging at the paper, and for once, I didn't feel afraid. If Clara wanted another war, she'd have one. But this time I wasn't running. I wasn't breaking. This time, I was ready to fight back. For a week I kept telling myself the letter meant nothing, just another of Clara's games. But I knew better. Clara didn't bluff. It's not over until I say it's over. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Every night I checked the locks twice, then sat staring at the door until exhaustion dragged me under. Even then, I dreamed of her. That cold smile, the lipstick on my mug, her whisper outside the cabin window. Then one evening the headline hit. Federal transport crash. 2 prisoners missing. Clara Hudson's photo flashed across the screen. She'd escaped again. The return. Rhodes came to my house that night, her face drawn. She's gone, I said before she spoke. Rhodes nodded. Intercepted transport. Fake roadblock. Driver drugged. Left alive. Whoever Tom worked for still has reach, and Clara's either their asset or their problem. Maybe both, I said. Rhodes exhaled. We're boosting your security. She'll come after you. I'll be ready. And this time I meant it. Preparing for war. I turned my house into a fortress. Cameras, reinforced doors, motion sensors, pepper spray by every entrance. I even took self-defense classes. But soon the signs started again. A voicemail with nothing but breathing. A single rose on the porch. A car that never left the curb across the street. She was close. Then a package arrived. No return label. Inside a USB drive and a note. Watch this alone. Against my better judgment, I did. Clara appeared on screen, calm and composed, dressed in prison gray. Hi, Grace, she said softly. If you're watching this, I'm free again. You've been so busy helping the heroes, haven't you? But tell me, did you ever wonder why Tom trusted you so much? My pulse quickened. It wasn't luck, she whispered. He wanted you to find the truth, while he cleaned the mess behind you. You weren't their destroyer, Grace. You were their janitor. Then she leaned closer. Check your accounts. The screen went black. The trap unfolds. I logged into my business account, and my stomach dropped. My company funds had been rerouted through offshore accounts I'd never seen. Every transfer carried my digital signature. Within hours, the IRS and cybercrime unit were calling. On paper, I was the one laundering money. It was perfect. Clara had turned me into the criminal. Rhodes rushed to my office. We're working on it, but she buried you deep. It looks real. Then we find her first, I said. Hunting Clara. Tracing the fake accounts led to a coastal town 2 hours away, Port Haven. Quiet. Remote. The kind of place people go to vanish. Rhodes told me to wait for backup. I didn't. The address ended at a weather-beaten cabin by the docks. A single light glowed inside. I knocked once. Her voice came through the door, smooth and steady. I was wondering when you'd find me. The showdown. Clara stepped into view, hair shorter, eyes colder. You've outdone yourself, I said. She smiled. Framing you wasn't personal, Grace. It was poetic. You wanted to ruin me. Now you'll learn what that feels like. You killed people, Clara. So did you, she said quietly. You exposed me. You killed who I was. I moved closer. You're done. She laughed. Who said I'm walking away? A shadow moved near the window. A man stepped out, gun raised. Put the bag down, he ordered, accent sharp, practiced. Meet Anton, Clara said sweetly. He's finishing what Tom started. So it was never about revenge, I said. It's business. Clara smiled. Exactly. The twist. Outside, engines roared. Red-blue lights spilled through the cracks. Rhodes's voice thundered from a megaphone. Grace Miller, step away from the house. Clara's eyes widened. You led them here? I smiled. No, Clara. You did. That USB you sent? Full of metadata. Her face twisted in rage. She lunged, grabbing my wrist. The gun went off, a deafening crack. Glass shattered. Officers stormed in. When the chaos cleared, Clara lay on the floor, bleeding but alive. Anton was pinned against the wall in cuffs. Rhodes shouted orders. I just stood there, shaking, watching it end. Clara looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. You think you've won, but you'll never be free of me. I knelt beside her. I already am. The end of her. Clara survived the shooting but went straight to a maximum security facility. Anton's confession dismantled the rest of the network and cleared my name. Tom's empire crumbled. Ethan disappeared into witness protection. And for the first time in years, I woke up without fear. But some nights, when the wind brushes the curtains, I still hear her voice. That whisper that used to haunt me. Only now, I whisper back. It's over. It's strange, really, how quiet life can sound after chaos. You go from sirens and shattered glass to the hum of a coffee maker in the morning, sunlight through clean curtains, and the silence of peace you never thought you'd feel again. That's my world now. Quiet. Uneventful. Beautifully ordinary. It's been a year since Clara's final arrest. A year since I stood in that blood-stained cabin watching her taken away for good. Sometimes I still see her in my dreams, but not with fear anymore. More like closure. My mind is finally filing her away where she belongs. In the past. But peace didn't come easy. It never does. Rebuilding myself. After the trial, I sold the old house. Too many ghosts in those walls. I moved to a small town north of Seattle, near the coast. The kind of place where everyone knows your name and no one asks too many questions. I opened a tiny bookkeeping office, Grace and Company. One desk, one sign, one promise. Honesty above everything. Clients came slowly at first. A cafe, a hardware store, a mechanic. But word spread. Within months, I had more work than I could handle. Sometimes people ask about my story, and I smile and say, I used to live a very different life. This one suits me better. And it's true. For the first time, I wasn't chasing revenge or survival. I was just living. The visit. One rainy afternoon, a knock came at my office door. Ethan. He looked older, tired, smaller somehow. But his eyes were the same, full of regret. Grace, he said softly. I heard you were here. I hesitated before letting him in. You shouldn't be. The press still watches you. I know, he said. I just needed to see you once. We sat in silence until he slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was an old photo. The two of us on a beach, laughing like strangers I barely remembered. On the back, he'd written, I hope you find peace. You earned it. When he left, I didn't cry. I just whispered, goodbye. And for the first time it felt final. A letter from the past. 2 weeks later, another letter came, official seal, prison stamp. It was from Clara. Grace, I don't expect forgiveness. I'm done fighting. I used to think power came from control, from fear. But you proved me wrong. Power comes from walking away. I envy you for that. I read it once, folded it neatly, and tucked it away. That was her ending, not mine. Finding purpose again. In the months that followed, I started volunteering at a women's shelter. Most were survivors of violence, betrayal, loss. Listening to their stories was like hearing echoes of my own. They'd ask, how did you move on? And I'd tell them, by realizing I didn't have to be the person who got hurt anymore. I could be the person who learned from it. One young woman hugged me once and said, you talk like someone who's seen hell and came back with a map. I smiled. Maybe I did. The reflection. One evening I walked along the cliffs above the ocean. The wind was sharp. the water gold in the fading light. I thought about the lies, the danger, the nights filled with fear, and it all felt far away, like someone else's story. I'd spent years defining myself by what people did to me. Ethan's betrayal, Clara's cruelty, Tom's manipulation. But none of that was me. I wasn't their victim, or their pawn, or their rival. I was Grace Miller. Survivor. Fighter. Human. And I was finally free. Closure. The last loose end came quietly. Rhodes called one morning. Her voice was gentle. Clara passed away last night, she said. Stroke. It was sudden. I sat for a long moment, listening to the rain against the window. You okay? She asked. Yes, I said. I think I am. After we hung up, I stepped outside and let the rain fall over me, the sky washing the last traces of her away. The last chapter. 6 months later, I published a book anonymously, titled When the Storm Ends. It wasn't about revenge or crime. It was about healing, forgiveness, and finding yourself again. Messages started pouring in from women across the country, thanking me, sharing their own stories. And that's when I realized something. I didn't just survive Clara. I outgrew her. The ending she couldn't take away. Sometimes at dusk, I light a candle in my kitchen, the same place where the story began. Now it's just me. And I smile because that's enough. People think revenge is the satisfying part of a story like mine. It isn't. It's the peace afterward. The quiet mornings, the laughter, the ordinary days. That's what survival really looks like. So if you ever find yourself broken, betrayed, or standing in the ashes of a life you once loved, remember this. You don't rebuild by becoming who you were before. You rebuild by becoming who you were always meant to be. And that's what I did. I became Grace again.